Okay, I hope you guys are able to see the screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's great. Okay, so let's get started. So let us do a quick recap on what we have discussed yesterday. So we have seen that Selenium is not a tool. It's not an automation tool like a GUI tool. It's just a collection of library. It's a framework. It's a project which is developed in Java and other multiple languages. So we can also call it as an API. And there are a couple of components of Selenium, which is like IDE, RC, WebDriver, Grid. Although we have not yet discussed what this IDE is, what RC is, WebDriver is. We're going to discuss all these things, all these components in depth in our today's session. So initially, there are different versions of Selenium. So initially started with Selenium 1, then 2, then 3, and now we have Selenium 4 in the market. So we're going to discuss about the basic architecture and the difference in all these versions as well, and why Selenium is best amongst, like Selenium 4 is best amongst all these versions. So we'll be discussing about these things as well. And then we have seen that Selenium is only for web-based testing, like we can only automate websites. But since it's an open source API, we can integrate all other things that are feasible in Java with Selenium as well. So we can automate the mobile part, the desktop part, the database part, the API part by integrating different open source projects. So even if we talk about rest assured, this is also open source. APM is open source. WinApp driver is open source. There are no license required to integrate all these things. Then we have seen a couple of features of Selenium that it supports multiple programming language. It doesn't mean that if my website is built up in let's say C#, then I'm going to learn C# to automate through Selenium. Then in case if it is built up in PHP, then I'm going to learn PHP. It doesn't mean that. No matter whichever language your website is developed, Selenium is not going to interact with the language of your website. It is going to interact only with the HTML components. So you, if you know Java, you can still automate any website built up in any language. And 70% of the market is still using Selenium with Java. And the next popular language after Java is Python and then C#. So even if you are finding openings, you'll see that the majorly openings are still around Selenium with Java, right? And then it has got multiple browser support, multiple platform support. Like if I talk about QTP UFT, we know that QTP is like if we talk about QTP, like we have seen Selenium supports multiple languages. Which language QTP UFT supports? What is the language supported by UFT?
VBScript.
VBScript. Correct. So VBScript, if you know about VBScript, which operating system VBScript supports? VBScript runs on which OS?
Microsoft Windows.
Yeah, it's a Microsoft component, so it works only and only on Windows. So it means if you are using QTP UFT, you are restricted only and only on Windows. But the client requirement is his product should be thoroughly tested on all major operating system, on all major browsers. So like, because end user can use Mac, could use Linux, could use any operating system, any browser, and your product should be working fine on all these operating system on cross platform basically, right? So if we are on QTP, we can only work only execute our automation task on Windows. Whereas if we talk about Selenium, as we said, like Java, if we talk about Java, Java is like if you have ever installed Java, the very first message you're gonna see is that 3 billion devices runs on Java. So be it Linux, be it Mac, be it Windows, iOS, Android, any platform you name is supported by Java. And if you are running your Selenium code on through Java, then you can execute that code on any platform you want, on any browser you want. So that too without paying any license. So this is one of the guys, please put yourself on mute. Okay. Right. So this is something best about Selenium, that it has got a cross-platform, across browser support, and we need not to pay any license to perform execution on any operating system for Selenium, right? So initially launched by ThoughtWorks, then like taken over by open source community, right? When the next version of Selenium, that was 2.0, was launched, then one of the person whose name is Jason Huggins, he used to work, not Jason Huggins, Jason Huggins was the initial developer. Then Simon Stewart is the original creator of WebDriver. So he used to work with Google as a lead developer, and many other Google developers, not only Google developers, since it's an open source project. So developers from big organization like Facebook, Amazon and other big organization, they have actually contributed into the development of the Selenium project. So that is the reason why it is very popular. Even if we are good in coding, we can also contribute into the development of this project, right? If your ideas are unique, if you can create some functionality, if you can contribute to the community, then it's an open source project. You can even participate in the development of this project, right? That is how open source projects actually work. Okay, then we have seen some of the prerequisites to get started with Selenium. The only prerequisite is you need to have Java installed on your machine. 1.8 is the most stable one, and then you need an editor. These are the two requirements to get started with Selenium. And all these things are open source, no license required for it. Then the next thing that you will be needing is the Selenium API. So this is the only prerequisite to get started with Selenium, right? Then there are a lot of integrations that you can do with Selenium. So integrations like, do you know what all other things we can integrate with Selenium? TestNG, Maven, Jenkins. Anything else?
Cucumber,
Apache UI.
Cucumber.
extend report.
And we'll
Then
set
I'm not
that.
sure, but maybe dependency.
Dockers,
Git.
extend report.
Apache UI.
Get POI,
Extend report.
extend reports. Great. Anything else apart from this?
Selenium Grid.
Grid is one of the component. Like we have IDE, WebDriver, Grid,
AWS.
right? So these are some of the integrations that can be done. And the topmost is like, in order to work on Selenium, we will be needing core Java. So first we'll be learning in depth of core Java. And then these are a couple of the topics that you have listed down. These are very important for Selenium. So what exactly, like, let's say if I talk about when we started with Selenium, we have written a little piece of code over here, right? What this piece of code was doing, if I run this, it's just launching a browser, navigating to the website and typing something in the username field. So let's assume this is our very first test case. The very first test case is to navigate to google.com. Then the next test case could be to get the title of the page. The third test case could be to type inside this input box. So let's assume we have executed 3 test cases, right? So if you take a look over here, anywhere did you get a message which is saying something like, we have executed 3 test cases, out of 3, 2 are pass and 1 is failed, or 3 out of 3 are pass? Any message are we getting over here?
No.
We are not getting, right? So this is because Selenium task is not to convert this code to test cases, right? Normally what we want is, guys, please put yourself on mute. So normally what we do when we do manual testing, we write test cases like, if expected is equal to actual, then the test case is pass, otherwise the test case is failed, right? And let's say we have written 100 test cases. Even if we do manual testing on it, at the end of the day, we need to tell that out of these 100 test cases, test cases, 90 are passed and 10 are getting failed. And why 10 are getting failed, we mention all the reasons as well. Right. So same thing we expect from automation as well. Automation is not like if I write 500 more lines of code and if I automate 2-3 modules of this website, then I simply click on run button and it keeps on executing things, clicking on the link, typing in an input element and perform all the action and then end. Right. So automation is not just the execution part. At the end, automation should tell us that, okay, we have executed 100 test cases and out of that 90 are passed and 10 are failed. And if 10 are failed, what are the reasons of failure? So Selenium task is not to tell you any such thing. Selenium is not going to tell you, because Selenium task is just to perform actions on the UI. If we talk about our entire course content, Selenium is only 25%. In your entire automation project, Selenium is just 25%. These are the things which are going to cover the 75% of the part. The major part is your core Java, right? So in order to convert this thing into test cases, we need some testing framework. And that testing framework is your TestNG. So TestNG, initially, there was JUnit. JUnit is still used in the market, but majorly used by developers. TestNG is similar to JUnit only, but it's an enhanced version of JUnit, right? It provides a lot of features which are not supported in JUnit. So now what is TestNG? This is another API, another jar file. So if I go over here to your project, if I want to add TestNG, TestNG is also a jar file. Like we added a jar file yesterday for Selenium. So Selenium, then other components as well. Same way, if you want to add TestNG, go to build path, add library, TestNG, finish. And you're gonna see what are these? These are jar files. So this is another Java project that we are integrating with Selenium. And now we can convert our existing project into test cases and test suites. And when we execute it, it is going to report us how many test cases are getting passed or how many getting failed. So that is what the purpose of using TestNG. Now, let's say, again, I was talking about, let's say I've automated 5 to 6 modules and I've written somewhere around 5,000 lines of code. So the code execution takes somewhere around 3 to 4 hours, right? So for those 3 to 4 hours, I'm not going to sit in front of my laptop to watch whether each and every action has been performed or not, right? Otherwise, there's no purpose of automation. I can do that thing manually as well. If I have to sit for 4 hours and watching each and everything is working fine or not. But at the end of the execution, how will I make sure that everything is successfully executed, whether it has clicked on that button, whether it has clicked on the link, whether it has typed in all the input fields, so all the actions are performed or not? How will I make sure about that? So what I'll do, I'll be generating something called as logs. For each and every event, logs will be generated. Logging will look something like this. If I show you how the logging look like, so I'll go to one of my project. Let's say from the previous batches itself. If I pick up any of the project, and if I show you how logs looks like, so this is something how the logs look like. With every timestamp that at this date, this time, this minute, this second, it is typing in first name and enter the value as this. Then at this second, it is typing in the last name, enter the value as this. Then clicking on this something like add customer button and performing other actions. So this is how the logs for each and every action that you perform on the web page will be added to this log file. And again, this is not a task of Selenium. Selenium is not doing all these things. So now you need to integrate another project with Selenium, which is called as Log4j. Now what Log4j is? another API, another jar file. So you'll be adding this jar file along with Selenium and you can generate the logs as well. Now, after the test execution is done, test results are generated. I want to show those test results to my client. But client is not a very technical person. He might not able to look into the complete log files to understand what the logs are doing, right? So he needs something like an interactive reporting sort of things. So something like a graphical charts and all those things. So what we're going to do, we'll integrate another project, which is created by some other person, which is called as extend report. So there are a lot of reportings that we're going to look at it. There are something called as test ng reports. There's something called as report ng report, right? There's something called as extend reports. If I show you how this reporting looks like. So if I go over here, so one of the simple report is this. See, which tells that how many test cases were executed, how many were failed, total execution time taken, and if there is a failure, what is the reason of failure? Expected was this, but found this, right? Failing the test as some button is not found. So if some test fail, the screenshot of failure, something like this. This is a simple report generated by TestNG. If you want more interactive report, you can also look at this report. This is created by a external plugin, which is called as report ng. So you can see more interactive report. So this is the screenshot of the failure. These are the messages, error messages, right? So this is how it's being reported. If you want more interactive report to this as well, then you can use extend reports, which are very much in use in the industry. So it looks something like this. See how many test cases are getting passed and each and every detailed information printed, typing in an element, entered the name as this, right? And if you look over here, this is the graphical results. So if a test case fails, it captures a screenshot as well. Let me see the failure one. This is the past one. See, this is the failed one. So the failure message is printed over here. The screenshot is also captured over here. So whenever a test fails, a screenshot will be automatically captured. So these are some of the things that we will be working on. And it will give us all the information that who was the automation tester, the organization, the build number, each and everything is properly mentioned over here. So this is not created by Selenium. So there is a different project altogether that you need to integrate with your project. And that is what is called as extend report. So these are nothing, these are all the jar files. Now, once the report is generated, you want that maybe you have executed a regression suite, or maybe the complete functional suite. You have created 500 test cases and the testing is going to take somewhere around 4 to 5 hours. So when you left from your office, you have executed that task. And what you want that once the task is finishes, I mean, it is going to take another 4 hours. So after 4 hours, automatically the report is generated. You want the report to be attached to an email, and it should be sent to your test manager, test leads, your development manager, your client. Everyone should receive it automatically. Then you'll not be manually like composing an email and uploading your test results to that email and sending it. You'll be using something called as Java Mail API. This is another jar file, right? And then we have seen yesterday that if I want to do something from reading and writing from Excel, then that is again not a task of Selenium. For that, you need POI API, another jar file, right? Now, what is Jenkins? Can anyone tell me what is Jenkins?
It's for the deployment.
Continuous integration. Continuous integration.
Continuous integration, continuous deployment, right? A number of things. Jenkins is quite huge, not only used by testers, even developers are using the same. Even DevOps team configure everything for Jenkins. A lot of plugins are integrated with Jenkins. But as a automation test engineer, what all things that we can do in Jenkins. I'll show you a small example of Jenkins as well.
That's all running.
Yeah, let me start my Jenkins services. I'll start it with this command. I'll show you how it looks like. So what happens, see, we have seen extend report, right? Now, whatever execution that we are doing, the test that we are executing is getting executed on our machine, right? And the reports and everything are generated on our machine. But let's say my client wants that I want to execute your test suite. I want to see how many test cases are being executed, how many are getting passed, how many are getting failed. So what my client wants that he wants to execute everything, but he's not a technical person. So he cannot like study the code, or I mean, you need to do the complete installation of your project on his machine. For that, you need to set up in the complete environment. You need to set up JDK. You need to download Eclipse. You need to download Maven. You need to download other things on his machine. Instead of doing all this setup, what you'll do, you're going to give him a GUI, a graphical user interface, a web page, some sort of thing, where he can log in. He can just click on the button and all the execution will happen. And there itself, he should be able to come to know how many test cases are getting passed, how many are getting failed. So that thing you can do with the help of Jenkins. If you go over here, Jenkins looks something like this. So this is a GUI. Client will be entering his username, password. We'll be clicking on sign in and see, he should be able to see the builds over here. And this is one of the automated build I have actually added. So as soon as I logged in, it has started executing. So this build I have configured for executing after every 1 minute. So after every 1 minute, you're going to see automation suite will automatically going to run and will going to generate everything. And at the end, we should be able to see the reporting as well attached over here. Right. So even again, you can see exactly after 1 minute, another build triggered. And if you see over here, so this is your test execution running the test suite. And now you're going to see in some time Chrome browser getting launched. And here the data is being read from Excel, all the logs you can see, and then the test execution completed, finished.
So for let's suppose this Jenkins, with which software it is integrated with? GitHub or?
See, that is what I mean. Jenkins can be integrated with GitHub. Jenkins can be integrated directly through Maven. So there are a lot of things that we can do. So right now, what I did, like I have integrated this, my existing project. So I've given my Maven path over here. So like the way I'm running it directly from my Eclipse, there is no need to run from Eclipse. I can simply click on a button and it was going to execute the test. So we are going to take a look at all the things. We'll be doing it practically in the live sessions as well. Right? Okay, yeah, Jenkins is free. You need not to pay any license to use Jenkins. Okay, so that is what Jenkins is. And now what is Maven?
Build version tool.
Build tool. Okay. Jenkins is a build framework. It's a framework. Framework for what?
It's just build tool like Gradle in Android build.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a build version tool. Yeah.
Initially there was Ant, then Maven, then Gradle, but still Ant no one is using these days. Companies are using 70% of the companies are using Maven, and then Gradle is a wrapper over Maven itself, right? So all these are build tools, but not just build tool. It is build tool plus dependency management tool. Now, what is build tool? What is dependency management tool? First, let us take a look at the building task. So see, when I am working on a project, now I want to execute this project. All the time I have to go inside Eclipse. I need to run the project from here, and then I'm executing it. But on the real time, when I'm using some external tool like Jenkins to execute it, So Jenkins is not launching Eclipse and clicking on the run button, right? So Jenkins is calling something else, which is building the project. That building task is actually done by Maven. So even if I'm not on Eclipse, if I go over here, if I go to my project, let's say if I go over here and if I just go to command prompt, or instead of even going to command prompt, what I'll do, I'll go to a notepad file and I'll write mvn clean test and I'll save it. Save it to this location. Save it to this location and I'll name it as runner.bat, something like a batch file. And I'll save this. So I'm not inside Eclipse right now. I'm on my local machine, right? I'm at this location. I'll just double click on this runner file and see what happens. See running test suite.
It's probably going to build the.
Yeah, it's building the code, and in some time you're going to see, oh, okay, so there are some failures. Maybe let me see why it failed. Could be some test which is clashing. Okay, it's not finding the location of the test. Maybe it's not configured properly. So what I'll do, I'll use this with some other project. Okay, there's the file. Let me run it again. And you can see a browser launches and the test execution will take place and then it should quit. Okay, so this is going to fail the test. And see, it's a parameterized test. So I've given a multiple set of data. So sometime it is going to pass, sometime it is going to fail, but it is going to inject different email IDs. So doing a login testing with multiple set of test data. Right, and see, I'm not using Eclipse. So all this task is actually done by Maven. So Maven is building and compiling the code and then executing your test case. So that is what the task of Maven is, right? That is one of the tasks of Maven. That is the building. Now, dependency, we're gonna see it in today's session. But before that, we need to discuss some other topics as well. Right, but I'll show you about dependency management. This is also very, very important in your project, right? Then what is GitHub is basically whatever code that we have written at the end of the day. It's same like developers. I mean, when developer, they are writing some code in a team, there are many developers, right? So everyone develop their own modules, let's say on a website, and at the end of the day, they have to check in their code to a centralized repository. Same thing happens with testers. As an automation tester, if we are writing some code, we're not going to keep the code on our local machine. We have to integrate that code into one single project, and we have to check in that code onto some centralized repository. So there are different like tools available. You may have heard about SVN is there. GitHub is there. GitHub is very popular. So it's widely used because it's available on a cloud platform. You can access the code from any part of the world, right? So you'll be checking in your entire project. GitHub looks something like this. If I show you GitHub as well, you can even check the code that Selenium guys have written. Selenium is an open source community. So this is like my repository. If I show you my code, then you can go over here. This is one of the project, and you can see the coding part kept over here. See, same code that I've written, right? In case you want to see the code from Selenium, guys. You can search for Selenium and you're gonna see Selenium HQ. So Selenium HQ is the official website, and here you're gonna see multiple projects. You're gonna go to the Selenium official project and see different languages are available. .NET, you want to see the Java one, go to Java one, and then you should be able to see all the source code of Selenium from here. So not only from here, I mean, in case you want to see what is there inside the Firefox class, yesterday we have seen a Chrome driver. We have added one class Chrome driver over here. If I want to see what is the code inside this Chrome driver class, I can see it over here as well. This is Chrome, and this is the Chrome driver class. This is the actual implementation that development team of Selenium has created, what they have written inside this Chrome driver class. Right, so it's their complete project. In case you want to see it inside your Eclipse, you can do that thing as well. For that, there are some additional configuration that you need to do that I'm going to show it to you in our today's session. So once we start using Maven as a dependency management tool, then we're going to show you that if you just do a click on this, it should show you the current code as well. So see, right now it's not showing, but we can configure it in such a way that we should be able to see the coding part of what is written in find element, what is written in this by, what is written inside this get title, what code is there, right? Although we don't need it because we are using Selenium for testing, for automation purpose. But still, if you are curious to see what the developer has written inside the get title method, so you can simply click on this, just do control and click, and you should be able to see the implementation of this method. Right, so we're going to talk about these things as well. Okay, so this is what GitHub. Then Docker. Before coming to Docker, we must discuss what these components are. Then we'll be able to understand why Docker is helpful here. So what is IDE? What is IDE?
The place where you write the code.
Play tool.
It's a record and play.
It's a record and play plugin. It's a very small plugin which is not at all used in the industry. Record and play. There are a lot of drawbacks with this IDE. It's only good for record and play. Like every automation tool, they have some record and play feature. QTP, UFT has invested a lot of their money in the record and play feature itself. Right, their record and play feature is very powerful. But if you talk about Selenium, then record and play is not at all of any use, right? You can try playing through it. So it's a plugin available for Chrome as well as Firefox. So this is something what your Selenium IDE looks like. So if you click on record a new test, give some name, let's say Google project, click on OK, give the URL http google.com, click on start recording. You can see a browser launches. Whatever action that you're going to perform over here, Selenium IDE is actually recording it. So if you click on Selenium, click on search, click on this link, click on close, and you can see all the actions are being recorded, right? So in case you want to play it, just stop this, name it as Google test, click on OK, and this is the run button. Simply click on this, you'll see that all the actions will be performed. There are some additional weight you might need to give, but right now you can see up till here the actions are performed. This action is not performed. This is not performed, right? So you may need to add some additional weight to perform these actions. But in case normally what people do, once they record all the scripts, so what they do is generally let's pause the execution and then we click on export as Java. We are working on Java right now. So click on export and name it as, I'll go to desktop, name it as Google test, save this. You'll see a Java file generated. Open this. Let me open it. And you're going to get an auto generated code, something like this. See. But this code is not at all complex that we need to do record and play to generate it. Once we start understanding Selenium, we'll find this is a very, very simple code. I mean, the one that we have written yesterday, if you compare this, so this is something like driver.get. You'll find driver.get over here, right? Driver.find element by dot something dot send keys. Driver.find element by dot something dot send keys, right? Driver.quit, driver.quit. So you got it auto-generated. That's good. But
Quick
this
question.
is not, I mean, you should be dependent on, right? You should not be dependent on getting the code from IDE and then copying it and then using it in Eclipse. 1 or 2 module, you can do it. But if you want to automate a huge website with so many functionalities, you cannot do it with Selenium IDE. The other drawback of IDE is you cannot integrate these components that we have just listed down. You cannot integrate log4j, cannot integrate Git, cannot integrate extend report. These are the things which are not going to work with Selenium IDE because it's a very small plugin only to capture some of the actions on the web page. That's it. If you want to integrate Excel reading, writing, sending of emails, generating extend report, that has to be done with some programming language. For that, you should be using Java itself, not the record and play part, right? So Selenium IDE is not at all used in the industry, right? If a company is actually working on Selenium, they're not going to use IDE at all. Okay, I've got some questions. Yeah. Guys, if you have any questions, you can ask it. But please put yourself on mute. There is a background noise.
Okay.
Vinod, please put yourself on mute. Okay. Yeah, guys.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
The record and play you did, which you exported, given a Java, given a JavaScript. If I copy that JavaScript and I post it into Selenium project, if I run it, will it work?
JavaScript from the IDE, you're saying?
Yeah. JavaScript from the IDE. If I put it.
For that, you need a JavaScript editor, or I mean, there are functionality in Selenium WebDriver as well, something called as JavaScript executor, where you can paste that JavaScript, and once you execute, that JavaScript will be performed on the web page.
Thank you.
Right. So we have practical examples for that. I mean, once we start with the course, if I show you one of the JavaScript example, then it's something, but yes, we can integrate JavaScript as well with our Java project. So it looks something like this. Let me show it to you. So JavaScript that I was talking about is something like this. See, this is JavaScript. This is your JavaScript. There are some actions even Selenium cannot perform. So one of the action is, if I talk about this particular website, so what I want to do on this website is, I was trying to capture some element like this submit button. And what I want that this button should be highlighted with some red color. The boundary should get highlighted. So that feature is not available in Selenium. But if it is not available, it doesn't mean that I cannot achieve it. So for that, there is some JavaScript available, which I've written over here. This is something like a JavaScript code. So this is going to change the color, background color to yellow. So if I run this code, if I run it, you're gonna see. Let's see, it highlights it with red color and change the background to yellow color for this particular element. Now this functionality is not coming from Selenium API. This is your JavaScript. So anything that you can do in JavaScript, you can integrate that thing with Selenium as well.
But sir,
Right.
this is not a test, right? This is like requirement that we have to make it.
This is based on the requirement. Yeah.
That's not a test, right?
Yeah, it's not a test, but it is depending on the requirement. If the requirement is like on the runtime, you want to change the font face, or you want to change the font size, or you want to highlight the element, you want to do any action. I mean, prior to Selenium, it's not like the automation was not there. When Selenium RC was started, I mean, the initial version of Selenium was started, it was JavaScript based only. So if we talk about JavaScript, so JavaScript executes on your client end as in on the UI part. Any action that we are performing, even if I'm performing click over here, I can automate that action using JavaScript. If I'm a JavaScript developer, I can write a little code. It is going to hit on this particular element and perform the click action. So initially when Selenium was designed, they have actually captured these JavaScript events into their projects itself. Right. So if you're a JavaScript developer, you even need not to use Selenium. You can write your own action, execute it, and the actions will be performed on your browser. But JavaScript is a little tricky as compared to the basic core Java. Right. So this is one of the feature. Okay. The other thing, I mean, we just discussed about what IDE is. And now let's come to RC. What is RC? Anyone know what is RC?
Remote server.
Remote control.
The full form is remote
Control.
Remote control server.
Yeah, so this is remote control. So like everything cannot be handled through IDE. There has to be some coding part as well. So for that purpose, they have created this RC when Selenium was initially started at 1.0. So RC was a simple library. One of the simple class was their default Selenium. So the class was something like this, default Selenium. And inside this class, there were a couple of methods. One of the method was open. If you want to navigate to a particular URL, you call open. There is a method called as click. There's a method called as type. There's a method called as get title. These were the methods that were there in the default Selenium library. And they've given you a jar file. So in case you want to access this class, you need a jar file. Like we have seen yesterday, how we have created a dummy Selenium. So that is how this project initially was created. So there was only one single class, and there was like 100, 200 methods inside this class. Very limited library, right? So now in order to automate your website, you just need to create an object of this class by saying default Selenium equal to new default Selenium. And then you'll say Selenium dot, the first method was start, then the method was open, then the method was click, then the method was type. One by one, you keep on calling the methods and you're automating your website. But this is like plain Java. How this is communicating with your browser? What is the mode of communication? What was written in the architecture of Selenium RC? That while executing this code, it is launching a browser, it is communicating with your browser, performing all the action. What is written behind the scenes? So how Selenium RC is communicating with your browser? It is communicating with the help of something called as JavaScript injection. So the code, let's say, if I talk about this click method, as I said, prior to Selenium, we can automate using JavaScript as well. So JavaScript for click looks something like this: document dot get element by ID dot click, something like this. This is some not a proper syntax, but JavaScript looks something. Even if you Google around how to click using JavaScript, you'll get something similar code. So what they have done, they have wrapped this code into the click method. So when you are calling click, it is actually executing JavaScript itself on your browser. And in order to support this JavaScript, we need to run something called as a Selenium server. So this was a prerequisite at that point of time. If this server is not started, your code is not going to be executed. If the server is not there, the JavaScript injection will not take place. So this was a prerequisite and this was a mode of communication. If I show you over here as well, this is what your initial Selenium looks like. So the very first version, and these are the components. So this was the remote server. So language, multiple languages were supported. So when you are executing your code, it goes through this remote server. The request is sent to this server, and then this request is sent to your application under test to directly to your browser in the form of JavaScript injection, right? They don't have any control over the browser. They are just injecting JavaScript, launching a browser and injecting JavaScript in order to perform action on these pages. There are some browsers that supports JavaScript. There are some browsers which does not support JavaScript. Like I was one of the major browsers at that point of time, but due to some security reasons, like it does not support JavaScript injection. So many of the time we are not able to execute code on Selenium IDE when we are executing it through Selenium RC, which was one of the biggest drawback. Because at that point of time, majorly IE was in use, right? A lot of websites, I mean, old website till today as well, they run only on IE. They're not supported on other browsers, right? So for those websites, you cannot automate it using RC if they are the secured websites. So that was one of the biggest challenge. The other biggest challenge was this small library, only few collections of method, right? Only under 200 methods. So all these challenges were recognized by Simon Stewart. And what he did, he created WebDriver parallel to Selenium RC. And how he overcome these challenges, the very first thing he did, he has removed the JavaScript injection from the architecture. So no more JavaScript injection. So if JavaScript injection is removed, then the browser which were not supporting JavaScript injection at that point of time will be able to work with those browsers as well. And the other major thing was a limited library. So he has created a huge collection of classes. For every browser, there's a different class. You want to work on Chrome, there's a class called as Chrome driver. You want to work on Firefox, there's a class called as Firefox driver. IE, Safari, Android, iOS, n number of classes, a huge collection of libraries they have created. But how these classes, again, JavaScript injection is not there now. But how these classes are communicating with the browser? When Selenium 2 was launched, when this WebDriver was launched, what they did a great merger. Selenium and WebDriver projects were merged into one single project. And they named that project as Selenium 2.0, or we call it as Selenium WebDriver. Right? Now this project, it has got IDE, it has got RC, it has got the new WebDriver as well as the Grid. Right? Because many companies were working on RC. Now all of a sudden we are saying there's a new version of Selenium, that is Selenium 2.0. Stop using RC and migrate to 2.0. So it is a little difficult. So what they did, they have kept RC as well in Selenium 2.0. But RC was there up till 2.44. In 2.44 release, they have mentioned that now we are deprecating RC. We are no more going to support any development on RC. If you face any issues, any bugs, we are not going to fix it. And finally, in Selenium 3, they have completely removed RC. So 3 is a combination of IDE, WebDriver, and Grid. And this 3 release went up to 3.141.59. And finally, 4 came into the picture with W3C compliance. So fully W3C compliance. Now, what exactly is this? How the browsers, how these classes are communicating with the browser? This is again a Java code, a simple Java code. But when I'm running this code, how it is launching a browser and how the communication is taking place. So the architecture of WebDriver 2 and 3 was almost the same. There was something called as JSON wire protocol. Although practically when we are working with Selenium, there has nothing to do with all these things, like the architecture part that we are discussing right now. But this is for your interview purpose. If someone asks you, explain the architecture of Selenium, what was there in 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, what is the difference in all these components, then you must be familiar with this basic terminology, right? So JSON wire protocol is something, if I again show it to you with the help of a diagram. So this is the architecture of what Selenium 3, up till Selenium 3, this was the architecture. Now there is a client. Client is your language, the language that the code that we are writing, Chrome driver equal to new Chrome driver. So that is your Selenium language binding. This is your Eclipse. Let's say this is your Eclipse. So when you are running your code, a request is sent to this JSON wire protocol. This JSON wire protocol is nothing. This is just like a REST API, a web service. It is taking a request. When the request is sent, it is encoded. This JSON wire protocol is actually encoding this request and sending it to your browser, but not directly sending to your browser. Now your browsers, your browser vendors, like if I talk about Chrome is a property of Google. Firefox is a property of Mozilla. Edge IE is a property of Microsoft. So they have actually created their own implementation of WebDriver in a form of these browser executables. If you remember in the yesterday session, what I did when I have written this code, before executing it, I have copied something called as Chrome driver.exe file. This exe file, I have actually downloaded it from the Chrome website, not from the Selenium website. This is provided by Chrome, Google. They have their own implementation of WebDriver. Now, what this class is going to do, this class is going to send the request to this Chrome driver. And then this Chrome driver is going to make a communication with the browser. That is how this communication is taking place. So what is happening over here? Your language binding, Java, is sending a request to the JSON wire protocol. This request is nothing. This is something called as a REST API, REST request. So REST calls like get, put, delete. In case you are familiar with little bit of API testing, if you have ever worked on Postman, then you must be knowing about what is a get call, what is a put call. If you're not familiar of that, don't worry about it. Join the API testing course as well. You'll be familiar with all these terms. But we need not to do anything with this in Selenium, right? This is just we are understanding the architecture that the client sends the request to JSON wire protocol. It encodes this request and send it to the browser executable, Chrome driver exe. And then Chrome driver exe performs the action on your browser. So once the request is processed, the response is sent back from the browser through the JSON wire protocol. It is decoded and send it back to your client. So the logs that you see over here, these are sent back from your client, from the Chrome driver executable. So it encodes and then decodes. So the purpose of this JSON wire protocol is to get the request, encode it, perform the action with the help of the browser executable, then get the response back, decodes it, and send it back to the client. This is how the architecture of WebDriver was designed, right? So this was up till 3.0. Now, what changes they did in 4.0? They have completely removed this JSON wire protocol in 4.0. Why? Because all these browsers are following the W3C, that is World Wide Web Consortium, the global standards that are defined by W3C. All the browsers have actually implemented those standards, but those standards were not there in Selenium at that point of time. Now, Selenium is globally used everywhere. right? Even in CMM5 level organizations, even in Google, even in Facebook, in Adobe, a lot of companies, big giants are using Selenium. So there has to be a standard protocol that this project should also follow. Although it's an open source project, but there should be well documentation, everything based on the W3C guidelines should be there. So that is what they've implemented in Selenium 4, and they have removed this JSON wire protocol, because if you take a look at the architecture of Selenium 4, this is how the communication happens. Now these classes are fully W3C compliant. So now when they are sending the request, there is no need to encode and decode. They can directly communicate with your browser executables, which are provided by the vendors. Because these browser executables are following the same W3C compliance which Selenium is following. So Selenium library can directly send the request to the browser executable, and then the browser executable directly perform the action on your browser, the real browser. That is how the communication. So this is a strong communication. It is directly communicating with your browser. It is not like JavaScript injection, right? JavaScript injection does not know which browser it is executing. If the browser is supporting, it executes it. If it is not, your browser throws exception that we cannot execute this script. So that was not a secured thing, but this is a proper channel. This is a secured communication, and that is the reason the performance is very high as compared to RC and the previous version of WebDriver, which was 3, because in 3 first encoding happens, then decoding happens. So that process is not there. So it is more robust, it is more fast and more reliable. Selenium 4, basically, if we talk about. So that's what the architecture of Selenium 4 is, right? Later on, we'll be seeing these things practically as well. Once we start writing the code, once we start exploring the API, we'll be understanding the architecture of WebDriver, Chrome driver, and other classes and other interfaces. We'll be looking all these things practically as well, right? But this is just a basic explanation of what Selenium 1 is, what 2 is, what 3 is, and what 4 is, right? So we have seen IDE, record and play. RC was the initial coding library. Then WebDriver came into the market. WebDriver from Selenium 2, like the coding part is WebDriver, and then 3 and 4, it's completely WebDriver, right? So Grid is one of the components that was always there. Starting 1 till 4, Grid is always there. What is Grid? What is Selenium Grid? Can anyone tell me what is Grid?
Yeah, it supports cross-platform and cross-browser compatibility execution.
Okay. How about others? Why is Grid?
In multiple browsers.
Multiple
Parallel
browsers.
execution.
Parallel execution. So is Grid tasked to parallelly execute the test case? Is Grid for parallel test execution?
Maybe sequential also.
Okay, parallel or sequential. Is it the task of Grid to execute parallel test and sequential test?
No, as far as I know, that's not the task of Grid.
On multiple machines?
So which task, which component is used to execute the test case parallel or sequential?
That
Test
is
engine.
the runner,
Grid is-
right? Runner, our test ng or J unit.
Test ng, exactly. So test ng framework is to execute the test case in parallel. Grid is not for parallel test case execution. Grid is for remote distribution of the test case. So remote distribution, as in, if I take an example, let's say we have a main machine. So in Grid, we have some architecture like nodes and hubs. Hub and nodes. So hub is your main machine where all your test cases are. Nodes are your remote machine. So this is your hub where you have kept all the test cases. Let's say 1000 test cases are there. And this is your node. Node 1, which is a window machine running Edge on it. This is a node 2 machine. This is a Linux machine running Firefox on it. This is node 3. This is let's say Mac machine running Chrome browser on it. So all your 1000 test cases are over here. Once you run the test from Hub, Hub is going to distribute the test for parallel execution or sequential execution. That will be decided by TestNG. So how you have configured your test case, you want to run it parallel or sequential. So that will be decided by TestNG. But let's say if you have 1,000 test cases, at times we need to do a browser compatibility testing manually as well, right? So what we do in browser compatibility, we have written 1,000 test cases. Let's say, let's assume we have written 100 test cases for login window. Now I want to test that login window is working fine on Chrome as well, on Firefox as well, on Edge as well, on IE as well, on Linux as well, on Mac as well, on Windows as well. So same 100 test cases I want to execute, and it is going to take me 1 day to execute the set of test case on one machine and one browser. So what I'll do, I'll allocate my other team members, 8 to 10 other team members, and all the team members will be executing the same test cases, but on multiple machines and different browsers. And at the end, everyone will be submitting their results, like whether it's working on IE, whether it's working on Chrome or not, on Firefox or not. So you can see 7 to 8 resources are allocated, and whole day they are executing the same set of test cases. Grid actually automates the entire task. So Grid automates your browser compatibility part. So in Grid, there is no physical interference. There is only one hub. And then when you execute your test cases from hub, all the test cases will be executed if you have configured it parallelly at the same time on all different connected machines. You're going to see IE is launching, Firefox is launching, Chrome is launching, and same set of test cases are being executed. And at the end of the day, you'll be getting a consolidated report that how many are passed, how many are failed, on which platform it passed, on which platform it failed. So there is no manual interference in Grid. That is what Grid. Grid is for remote execution of your test cases. Right? Parallel or sequential will be decided by your TestNG framework.
So what was the difference between grid 1, grid 2, or grid 3 in different Selenium?
The same difference is just the architecture. The architecture of Grid 1 was more of a JavaScript injection. Grid 2 and Grid 3 was the JSON wire protocol. In Grid 4, there is a complete redesigning of Grid happened. They have written the complete code of Grid architecture from scratch. And in that, they have integrated a lot of other components, something called as Docker as well. So Docker, what is Docker? Can anyone tell me what is Docker?
So just one question before we move to Docker.
Yeah.
So as you said,
It is a type of container where we store the whole software.
Okay.
Or we can create an image of the product for various, means we do for various customers.
That's great. That's great. Okay. So before Docker, there was one more question. So let us first complete that, and then we'll come back to Docker. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so is Grid is a general terminology or it just with the Selenium? Because all other, like you taught us about something about QTP, so that is also having this property,
No,
right?
see, QTP only runs on Windows. So
I mean, but this should have also this property, no? That other I'm just not specific to QTP. There are other tools also which provide these features. So do we call them generally Grid, or it's only
no. I mean, they see, as I know, I mean, like the major automation tools, Grid is like one of the unique functionality that Selenium has. Maybe there might be other tools, they may have named this functionality something else, but they have not taken anything from Selenium. Grid is a property of Selenium itself.
Okay. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, please go ahead. Now tell me what Grid is. Oh, sorry, what Docker is. So what is Docker, guys?
It's kind of replicating the entire project with minimal dependencies that is required, and that can be executed remotely from anywhere. So you don't have to download all the dependencies, kind of the software inter requirements, and with minimum, I mean, it automatically has that feature to just run the same copy on different machines or based on different customer requirements.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
a routing symbol, I say Docker is a just containerizing tool, and where it doesn't have a OS. Correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so a lot of correct answer. All these answers are correct. But to be on a very high level for the beginner level for the timing, as many people might not be aware of what containers are, what images are, right? So grid is something like, let's take an example related to Selenium for the timing. So what we are doing with grid, like we are executing test cases on multiple machines, right? Now, let's say my requirement is to execute 10,000 test cases on at least 100 machines. So how will I going to do that? One of the thing is, like, I'll ask my company to create a complete test bed in which they're going to provide me 100 physical machines, right? But that will be a huge investment. Or what I can do, I can configure a virtual machine. Virtual machine, if you have ever tried to configure virtual machine, it gets installed on your local machine itself, right? And it consumes, it takes all the internal memory, the space, and if you turn on the virtual machine, it slow down the performance of your PC. Now, what about if I ask you to install 2 or 3 virtual machine, or maybe 100, which is not feasible? Right, so 100 virtual machines are not feasible. If you install even 2 virtual machines, your system will gonna die. So for that purpose, that is where the Docker comes into the picture. Docker are something that replicate your virtual environment itself. It's like a container. There are multiple containers we can create, and we can download the images of OS and put onto it, and then we can execute a test from the hub, and that hub is going to execute the test cases on those Docker containers. And there we can launch n number of browsers. We can create n number of containers and launch n number of browsers over there. So that is what the purpose of Docker is. So like Grid, if you search over here, they have recently, like in Selenium 4 itself, if you search for Selenium 4 Grid, you'll see from the Selenium side itself, this is their GitHub repository. So the content can be found on there. They have moved, okay, they have moved this content to over here. Grid 4. Okay, I guess they recently changed the documentation to here, but they have something implementation over. Just give me a moment. Grid 4, this was the Grid 4. Then, yeah, I guess from the GitHub, they have moved the link because they have given the complete steps over here. Let me see. Yeah, now this is coming to the official document. That's fine. So there's a whole big documentation, what all components this grid contains. I guess if I write Selenium Grid Docker, so we may gonna see, yeah, this is Docker Selenium. So this is for Selenium Grid with Docker images support, where you can like create different images for Firefox, for Chrome, for Edge, and you can execute your test cases on these containers, not on your physical machines, but on the Docker containers. And these things can be set up on any cloud network as well, right? Even on the cloud these days, cloud is very much popular. I mean, we have 3 major players in the cloud platform. One is the Amazon. The second one is Microsoft Azure. The third one is Google Chrome. Google Cloud Platform, GCP. So Amazon is something which we know with the name as AWS. So we are going to cover the integration of AWS as well. So we're going to see how we can build up these images on even the Docker images on the AWS platform. And then while running the test from our local machine, the test is going to run on the cloud platform. So that is what the integration will be taking a look by the end of the sessions, we're going to have one session on this AWS. The grid part specifically will be covering by integrating with AWS, so that once we run a test from here, the test is going to be executed on the remote machine, and that remote machine will be our AWS machine. So these are some of the things that will be
If I
covered.
may ask over here, what sort of images we are talking about here?
For here, I mean, images, it could be like, if you take a look over here, specific to this Docker grid part. So here we'll be getting the images which will gonna have Firefox as a standalone browser, Chrome as a standalone browser. So different images for these browsers will be setting up.
Okay. Thanks.
Right, and not just this, we can create an image which will gonna have Selenium Hub. So these are the things which are already created. We are just going to download these images. These are already created by Selenium team. So we are just downloading these images and building it into our Docker container, and then we are making a use of it.
Rahul sir, just got mixed up with two things like AWS, Grid, and Docker, but still I did not get completely what is Docker.
Okay, so Docker is something like a container which we can configure it on our machine as well. So containers, you can treat it as a virtual environment for the timing, because it is little difficult to explain it without practical implementation. And there are many people who are not familiar with Docker, but you can see over here. So it's simply like different machines or virtual machines. You can say it's simply like a virtual machine, but it's not actually a virtual machine. It's a very lightweight container which will hold your browsers. And when we are executing the test from local machine, it is going to execute on that browser, which browser is not going to launch on your machine. So you can assume that it is launching on a virtual machine. But we can create hundreds of such virtual machine, and we can execute our test case and distribute onto those virtual machines. So that is what platform that Docker is going to provide us. Now, AWS is a cloud platform. So AWS is something like your laptop, right? On your laptop, you can install Eclipse, you can install Java, you can install Docker, you can run Selenium code. Same thing, you can do it on a cloud machine. So AWS is providing you multiple machines. They are providing you a Windows machine. They are providing you like a Linux machine. So you can use their Linux machine and you can install Java on it. You can install Maven on it. You can run your Selenium test on it. So you can treat that as a remote machine as well. So one of the machine is your local machine, your laptop. When you run your test from here, the test will be executed on the remote machine, that is on the AWS machine. So that is what AWS, Amazon Web Service, they are providing. So they are providing everything on the cloud platform.
Clear, sir. Clear. Thank you.
Right.
Rahul, I have a question.
Yeah.
So for container part, if so, just want to understand, like, if we want to execute our test on, say, suppose Windows machine and with Chrome browser, so that will be one part of container. Window with Firefox.
The window at the moment, these Dockers are the Linux-based containers.
Yeah, I'm giving for the example purpose. I'm not getting into the exact. So if I want to like add for Mac with Safari and Mac with Chrome, so that will be like a different separate different copies.
Yes.
So that your test can execute on that particular OS that is compatible to the browser.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So that way we can distribute it like small components to make faster execution and to reduce the complexity.
Absolutely.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah. So another question asked by Harry, there was some log4j issue. I guess everyone is familiar with some vulnerability issue with log4j, but I mean, we are not going to develop anything, right? So we are just maintaining logs. Even if we are using log4j, we are just maintaining the logs in a separate log file. So yeah, it depends on you. If you want to use the latest version of log4j, that is log4j 2 something, the latest version, so that has already overcome that vulnerability issue, right? So don't worry about that part. We are not building anything.
Yeah, so Rahul sir, actually you have mentioned about Docker images.
So as you mentioned, the images part. So what does it actually mean? Is it a kind of code or what?
Image is like a copy.
Okay.
The copy that holds, let's say, your operating system. So you're just copying that image into your container. So someone has created that image. You are just downloading that image and installing it in your container.
So how does it help in means particular coding?
See, the thing is that I want to, let's say, launch my test on some remote machine. One of the thing is that I should create that image. I should have a browser installed on that image. I should have a OS installed on that image. But if I go to this Docker Hub, there is something called as Docker Hub, which has got collection, which is something like you may have heard about Play Store, Google Play Store, right? It has got so many applications, games that you can download. Same way, there is a hub for Docker as well. There is a Play Store for Docker images as well. So you just need to download that particular image. Some guy has already created hub. Some guy has already created image for Firefox. Some guy has already created image for Chrome. So you just need to get that image and build it on your Docker container according to that image, right? So you need not to do all the installation. You're not installing Firefox on it. You're not installing other services on it. You're not creating an image. You're just getting that image. That image is already created.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right. So that is what like we'll be covering with Docker, right? And now if I show you some more example, yesterday what we did, let's do the same configuration again. Let me close it. So let me repeat.
Ram, just one more question before we start. That is related to Selenium. So does Selenium provide any flexibility with the non-functional testing also, like maybe the security or network testing or the
Selenium
performance
is
testing?
only for functional testing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so let's see how we're gonna get started. Let me close this and gonna redo the steps that we did yesterday to get started with Selenium. So the very first thing, we'll be creating a new Java project, a simple Java project. We're gonna name it as, let's say, Selenium. What should we name it as? Selenium Web Driver. And click on Finish. So now, like prerequisite before this is we need to have this IDE Eclipse available, and we need to have the Java installed on our machine. After that, to get started with Selenium, we need the Selenium API. So that you'll be getting it from selenium.dev, the official website of Selenium. And I would also want that you should go through this website because it contains a very good documentation. If you go to this documentation part, you should be able to see the overview of the Selenium WebDriver project, the components, IDE, grid, right? WebDriver, what is WebDriver? You can go through it. You can read about all these components. Then you can take a look at a couple of the WebDriver examples, how you can get started with it. So see, WebDriver is a W3C recommendation. And then to get started with browser, like getting the title, getting the current URL, browser navigation. So all these different examples they have given over here as well, how to handle alerts, how to handle windows, how to handle frames, then working with elements, finding elements. So it's a very good documentation. I mean, one must refer to this documentation as well. And then even for grid, it's a very good documentation, how to configure different architecture of grid, different components of grid. So all these things are given in a very beautiful manner, and this very well documented. I mean, like although it's an open source project, but still it is a very well documented because it's very widely used in the industry, right? So just go through this documentation as well. Now, if I go to this download part, so from here, we can download the latest stable version of Selenium. So this is 4.1.1 at the moment, and we'll be using the latest version itself. There is no reason to work on previous Selenium 3.14151 or any previous version. We should always be using the latest stable version only, right? So if I click on this, then it is going to give me a jar file. So that jar file, I'll be right clicking on my project. I'll go to build path. and I'll click on add external archives. At times, if this add external archives is not visible on your IDE, then go to configure build path. Configure build path, and over here, click on libraries, click on add external jar because it's an external jar. Click on add external jar, select your jar file, click on open, click on apply. That's it. That's the only configuration for Selenium, right? We cannot install Selenium. We always configure Selenium. So we have configured Selenium. Now we should be able to access all the classes which are there inside this Selenium library. So to get started, the very first thing, we'll be creating a new class. So we're going to name it as, let's say, test browser, and check this public static void main, because everything will be executed from this main method. So one of the class that we'll be working with is Chrome browser. So Chrome driver will be creating object of this class by saying Chrome driver equal to new Chrome driver. So you can see I'm getting some errors over here. Why? Because this class is inside some package. Like in case you have worked on C, C++, initially we used to include Conio.h, include Studio.h, right? A number of packages that we need to include. Same way when we work on Java, we need to import import java.util.start, java.math.random, and number of other libraries. So whatever classes that we are using, if that class is in a particular folder, right, we need to call that folder over here. So that folder is actually called as package. So this Chrome driver class is inside some package, is inside some folder. We cannot directly access it. This class is inside which package? If you go over here, if you expand this jar file, you will see all these are folders. Folders are called as packages in Java, right? If you go down, this class is somewhere in org. Then we have so many packages, OpenQA, Selenium, Chrome, and this is where the Chrome driver class is. So what I need to do, I need to write an import statement first. I need to add this package over here. How? By saying import org dot, see, I'm going to get all the suggestions. So OpenQA dot Selenium dot Chrome dot star automatically add, and you can see the errors are gone. But how will I come to know where? See, I know that this is inside this package, but how will you come to know about it? You're not going to open this and explore this entire like package structure. So there is an official documentation which is associated with this jar file. So that you can go over here and you can look at this documentation. Down over here, you will see a API doc over here. Just click on this. And then you need to click on frames. So you should be able to see all these classes. See. And from here, you will be searching a class with the name Chrome driver. And here you will be able to see the package org OpenQA Selenium Chrome. But this is again a manual step to add this import. If I'm doing it manually, then I can do it on a notepad as well. What is the need of Eclipse? So Eclipse task is to do all these things automatically. Just move a mouse over, do a mouse over on your class. You will see it is giving us the option to import. Click on this and this will be automatically added. Right? There's a shortcut as well that I did yesterday. Control-Shift-O and your packages will be added automatically. Maybe you have added 10 classes over here and all the classes are throwing error. So you need to import all the packages either one by one or do Control-Shift-O. So the shortcut is Control plus Shift plus O. And once you do this, the package is automatically be added over here. Now, after writing this command, a constructor of this class will be called and a code is written inside the constructor that it is going to launch a Chrome browser. So let's run this and let's see if the browser is launched or not. As soon as I run it, it errored out. Now let's see why the error is there. So let me expand this and let me try to read this error. It says exception in thread main some Java lang illegal state exception. It is saying the path to driver executable must be set by webdriver.chrome.driver system property. So it is complaining that it is not able to communicate with the browser because this driver executable is missing from the path. Now this driver executable is your Chrome driver executable, which you need to set by this property, this system property. How you need to set it? First, you need to get this Chrome driver exe file. Now, where will you get this file from? You'll get everything from the Selenium website itself. You need not to directly go to Chrome website and get it from there, Google website and get it from there. You simply type selenium.dev, go to download. From here, just go down and you'll see something that says platform supported by Selenium browsers. If you click on it, you'll see Firefox, IE, Safari, Chrome. This is Chrome. Go to the documentation and see, here you get all versions available in download. See, Chrome driver. This is a website not by Selenium. This is by chromedriver.chromium.org. Right? This is a Chrome project, not a Selenium project. And from here, you first need to check what is the version of your browser. So go over here, go to help, go to about Chrome. It will tell you that this is 97.0.46 version. Corresponding to that, you will see the executable file. So you need to download the same which is corresponding to your version. Just click on it. It will tell you the option for Linux, Mac, Windows. Based on your operating system, you need to download it. So let's download it for Windows. I've already downloaded it yesterday. So if I click on OK, go to this folder. And this is where the zip file is. Unzip it and you're going to get the exe over here. This is the exe file. Now copy this path. Copy this path. Go back to your Eclipse and just read the message again. The path to the driver executable must be set by WebDriver Chrome driver system property. So there is an internal class in Java which is called as system.setProperty. And see, it is giving you two options. One is key, the other one is value. In the key, and these both are in string format. String means double quotes. So in the key, you need to give this key. WebDriver.chrome.driver. Okay. Let me copy this. WebDriver.chrome.driver. Copy this and paste it over here. And the second one is the path to the Chrome driver file. So this is the path. Just copy this, paste it. When you paste the path with backslash, it converts to double backslash. This is something called as escape sequence in Java. So then give Chrome driver.exe. If you give /, it will be single /. If you give backslash, it will be double backslash. And then save this. Let's run it again and see if it works. So this time I'm not getting any error. And see, it has launched the browser. So this is what it was actually looking for. It was looking for the Chrome driver executable because the Chrome driver executable only sends the request to the browser to launch the browser. Selenium is not directly sending the request to launch the Chrome browser. Selenium is sending request to this Chrome driver executable. Now, if you don't want to give this thing, if you run it, again, you're going to get error. So what you can do, you can just go over here, copy this file and paste it to the root of your project. And now let's run this again. So it will automatically going to take it from the root of the project, right? No errors. So then once it is working fine, you can try navigating to some website. Let's go to driver.get and let's go to http waytoautomation.com. Let's save this, run this, and see it is going to navigate to waytoautomation.com. Now, after navigating to the website, I want to get the title printed from the website. So how to print the title? We're going to call the method get title. So it is going to get the title, but not print the title, because printing task is of Selenium. So we'll be, printing task is of Java. So we're going to do system out println, and we'll be saving this thing inside system out println. And let's run this, and we're going to see it again navigates, and then the title is printed, right? And after this, I want to close the browser, or I want to quit the browser. So one of the method is close, one of the method is quit. What is the difference in close and quit? Can anyone tell me? Close is also going to close the browser. Quit is also going to close the browser. Then what is the difference in close and quit? See, the browser quits.
The close will close on the browser.
Okay. So yes, that's true. So close is going to close the current browser only. If in a session there are tabs, pop-ups, other browsers also, other windows also open in the same session, then we use driver.close. So it is going to close only the browser where the focus is on. If our focus is on the 10th window, it is going to close the 10th window, right? Whereas when we use driver.quit, it is going to kill the entire session, closing all the opened browser in the current session only. It's not like if there are other browsers open in the previous session, it is going to close that as well. It is not going to do any work, any action on the previous open browsers. It is only going to run on the current session, right? So this is a very simple code, but we have made sure that the Chrome browser is working fine. Selenium configuration is completely fine. And now we can proceed with our testing. But I want to make sure that other browsers are also working fine. Let's try one on Firefox as well, so that at least for this week, you can try doing this configuration. At least these two browsers must be working fine on your machine. And in the next session, we're going to look at Edge browser, and some other interesting topics are about to come that we're going to pick in the next sessions only. So after Chrome driver, let's talk about Firefox. So again, we need to go to Selenium downloads, and let's look for the browser Firefox, where we have Gecko driver. So go to documentation and download the latest one from this release. Latest one is 0.30.0. And where are we gonna get this file? Let me see. 30, if I click on this, where is the executable file? Okay, these are the executable files. So see, there is a different file available for 64-bit and a 32-bit window machine. And this is for Mac. This is for Linux. So and let's unzip it. So we're gonna get, where is the file? This is the 0.30. So what I'll do, I'll just gonna copy this and paste it to the root of the project, right? And then instead of this Chrome driver, I'm gonna change it to Firefox driver. Firefox driver equal to new Firefox driver. Let's run this. And see, the Firefox browser launches, navigates, then quits, right? And printed the title. So that is how very simple configuration of Selenium, very simple piece of code to get started with. And even the configuration of the browsers and other things are pretty much straightforward, right? Now, the only challenge we're gonna see over here that Selenium is an open source library. The version keeps on changing every now and then. Prior to this version, it was 4.1.0. Prior to 4.1.0, it was 4.0. Right? Prior to 4.0, it was some like beta version, then alpha version. Prior to 4 alpha, it was 3.1415. Now, if you want to see the complete version history, you will be able to see it from the official website of Selenium. This is same like a development process. So in development, we have builds, right? So what happens is whenever code is written, developer checks in the code, a build number is generated, right? So whenever a final product is launched onto, let's say, a staging server or not onto a production server, a major release version is generated. Let's say a release is 1.0, then we have new features come into the development, then next release is 1.1, then 1.2, then 1.3. All of a sudden, the technology changes. Initially, it was in C#. Now the project is migrated to Java. Then the version changed from 1.0 to 2.0. Then again, the technology changes, then 2.0 to 3.0. Same thing is happening with Selenium. This is also a development project, right? And whenever the developer, they checks in the code, they maintain some coding practices where they mention that what all things that they have pushed into this particular release. So you should be able to see all these things with Selenium as well. If you go to download, you should be able to see when these versions are launching, what changes they are doing it by clicking on this change log. So you can see, you can track all these changes over here. See version 4.1, what they have implemented. At times, some of the things are related to like development part as well. So you may not need to worry about what this is, but some of the things that you can even track on this, what bugs they have fixed, what new features are coming in 4.1 or 4.0, right? So from here, you can keep a track what was there in Selenium prior to Selenium 4 as well. So all these things, they have mentioned it over here. So it's a huge document. Since Selenium 2, they are actually tracking all these things, like posting all these things over here, so that anyone can take a look and can guess that what new, if there is a new feature coming, if there is a bug fix coming, right? And what is the current version, what it contains. So all these things can be tracked from here. Right. Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, this is where you can keep a track on it, right? But see, as I said, this is one of the things that you need to manually do. Manually do as in after this, if 4.2 comes into the picture, then I'll be removing this jar file and I'll be adding the 4.2 jar file, right? If the Chrome browser, right now it's 97, next time it changes to 98, this exe might not work. So I need to go to, again, the website, I need to download the exe file, right? This is again a manual task. So downloading exe is okay. But if I talk about this jar file, so as I say, I mean, when you're working in a Selenium project, you'll not be using only Selenium. You will be using TestNG, you will be using POI, you'll be using Log4j, you'll be using Mail API. So you'll be having hundreds of jar files. And if you see the other jar files, if I open the previous project where I've added a couple of jar files, you're gonna see that every jar is a project actually, right? POI is a Java project. MySQL is a Java API. So they have their versions as well. And over there as well, the versions keep on changing, right? Because these are also open source platform. So every now and then you'll see POI. Initially it was 3, then 3.1, then 3.5, then 4, then 5. Same with MySQL, same with Java Mail, same with n number of other jar files. So the versions keep on changing every now and then. So every now and then when version change, will you be removing all these jars and will you be adding the new jars all the time? Let's assume if there's a team of 10 testers working on a same project. And all of a sudden, like let's say all the team members were working on Selenium 3. And all of a sudden Selenium 4 came into the market with some new classes implementation. So what I did as a tester A, I've removed Selenium 4 and I've added Selenium, I've removed Selenium 3 and I've added the latest jar file, Selenium 4. Whereas other team members are still working on Selenium 3, right? So at the end of the day, as I said, the code we are not going to keep on our machine. We have to check in this code to a centralized repository. Let's say GitHub. And every team member has to check in their code, so that a common branch can be created and the code can be merged into that branch. So what happens when I am going to check in the code, my code is going to contain all the latest classes. But when other people are checking in, they're using the old jar files only. So that is where the clash is going to happen. Now, very next day, when we come back to the office, we take a fresh checkout of the code. So as soon as the other people are going to take a fresh checkout of the code, they're going to get the new classes, but they're still using the old jar files. Because whenever we are checking in the code, we don't check in the jar file. We only check in the code. So if they're using the old jar files, if they get the new classes, all the classes will gonna throw errors because they don't know where these classes are coming from. Now, let's say they even come to know there is a new implementation, Selenium 4 is there. Now what they'll do, they'll go to the website, they'll again gonna download the latest Selenium 4. And this is not only for Selenium. There might be a change in POI version. There might be a change in MySQL version. Might be a change in Java API version. So it is very difficult to manually manage all these jar files. These jar files are actually the dependency of your project. Your project is dependent on these jar files. So we need a tool which can manage these dependencies, so that we need not to manually add the jar files to the project. It should automatically get downloaded and added to the project. For that, we'll be using one of the dependency management tool, which is called as Maven. So we're gonna look at this part, but not today. Otherwise, it will be a little complex to digest. We'll be looking at this from the next session. Right, so this is specifically for the people who have completed the core Java training and now moving to the Selenium part. We're gonna start our sessions from Maven itself. Right, so that we need not to manually download this Chrome driver or Gecko driver. These will automatically gonna get downloaded based on the latest version of browser. We need not to worry about these executables as well. We need not to worry about these jar files as well. Automatically latest jars are going to get downloaded on everyone's machine. So this is something that this magic we are going to look in our next session. Before that, we'll be understanding some architecture behind Maven as well, but it is a little difficult to discuss it right now. Otherwise, many new people might not be able to digest it. Right, but later on, all the projects that we are going to work on will be Maven projects only. All the frameworks, everything that we are going to use will be the Maven projects only, right? But before that, all the new people must clear the core Java concepts. And then once you come to the Selenium part, we'll be discussing all these things. Whatever that we have discussed in these two sessions, we'll be repeating these stuff again. Once your core Java is over, immediately your Selenium part will start. Right, but for rest of the people, you will be continuing. Whosoever have finished the Java part, you guys will be continuing in the same batch. And from next Saturday, Selenium part will be starting at 8:30 India time. And for the core Java, it will be started at 8 p.m. India time. Right. So that's all, guys, for today's session. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's session and have got some learning from these sessions. Right, anything that you want to share?
So we will get the separate invite for the Java session, right?
Yes, we'll be we have already formed up the WhatsApp group, so we'll be sending it to everyone. Just join your Java WhatsApp group or the Selenium WhatsApp group, whosoever is starting with Selenium, and all the meeting invites will be shared in the WhatsApp group itself.
Okay.
Yes, it's very helpful to us. Previously, how did you updated the description, right? this batch.
Thanks, Trainer.
Thank
you so much.
So Maven is something else, and POM is also something else, right? Two different
Yes,
things.
POI is a Java project. Maven is a separate tool.
No, POM.
Oh yeah, POM is the heart of Maven. This is a POM. You might not get confused with POM as a page object model. That is a different. That is a framework. There's a POM.xml file in Maven as well.
Yeah, which we use in automation something.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, once we download this Maven, if there is any change in the version of, say, let's say, Apache POI or Log4j, so automatically the Maven would take care of it and it would upgrade the same in our machine.
Yeah, see, there are two things we can do. We can configure it in a way to add latest dependency, and it is going to download the latest dependency. There is another way where we just need to mention download 4.0, and it is automatically going to get that 4.0. So we need not to go to the Selenium website and download 4.0. Same thing with POI. We need not to go to POI website and download the latest one. It is automatically going to get downloaded through Maven.
So one question.
Yeah, I mean, once it is downloaded, if the version gets changed, so just like I have Java JDK 1.8 in my machine, and every time I get the notifications that the upgraded version is available. So like that also the Maven would take care of upgrading.
Yeah, that again, there are two things. You can have the manual configuration, like manually you go to there's the XML file which is called as pom.xml file. So there manually you change from 4.0 to 4.1 and automatically the jar get downloaded. Or the other thing, because see, at times you don't want it to automatically update to the latest version. So you want that I should be going to the pom.xml file and I just need to mention 4.0. That's it. I just need to write over there. So that will gonna get downloaded automatically. But yes, if you want that Maven should automatic, I need not to mention get the latest jar file. Then there are some configuration in pom.xml file where you can mention that Selenium instead of version mention latest over there. And all the time it is going to take the latest dependency only, latest jar file only.
Okay, thanks.
So, sir, it will automatically, like if suppose I upgraded the browser version from, so it will automatically take care of it. Like,
Yes.
The Maven.
Yes. Yeah, Maven, there is another internal project that we need to integrate, which is called as WebDriver Manager. So that project is automatically going to get these browser executable based on the browser version that you are using.
Okay.
Okay, Rahul, what was that? You said one is manually updating in the POM file and other one is automatic.
Yeah, so automatic is something instead of, let's say there is Selenium dependency, a version mentioned as 3.141.59. Now you want to change it to 4. So you will just remove 3.1.49 the text and add the text as 4.0. So the dependency get downloaded. But instead of the version number, if you write latest over there, so it is automatically going to take the latest one all the time. When you run your project, if there is a new version of it launched, so automatically it downloads the latest one. You need not to go every time and change the version.
Okay. Right, thanks.
Yeah, Rahul, at some point of time you were saying something about the wrapper. You said that the wrapper Gradle is a wrapper on Maven. So what does it mean?
Wrapper is, Gradle is like if we talk about APM, what is APM? APM is nothing, it's a wrapper over Selenium WebDriver. So all the internal structure, the architecture, the classes, APM has taken from Selenium only. And then they have added there some additional functionality. So they have not rebuilt the entire project. They've taken the Selenium project of UI, used the same class and added some on functionality. And then using that functionality, you can execute it on, let's say, a real device. But you're gonna feel like that you are writing Selenium code only, because the way we have written driver.findElement over here, same driver.findElement work with APM. And same thing is with Gradle. Gradle is nothing new. It's Maven only, but you can call it as an enhanced version of Maven with some additional functionalities.
So it's like we don't have to reinvent the wheel. So it's
Yes,
already
absolutely. Absolutely.
So is wrapper similar to overriding some methods or?
Yeah, you can say overriding. I mean, using some existing technology, existing functionality, and adding some new features as well.
Okay.
Rahul, does Selenium supports tab level testing? I mean, if you have to
Yes,
multiple
the
tabs.
latest Selenium 4, it supports the tab. You can launch a new tab, you can launch a new window. So all these things are supported in Selenium.
But not in 3.0, right?
Yeah, not in 3.0. Tabs were not supported in 3.0.
Okay. And one more question, I was like, this. I'm sorry, I just missed it. I'll come back to you. Sorry.
That's fine. That's fine.
Rahul, one more question from next sessions for the Selenium batch. I know you cover most of the basic stuff I get already. So are you going to start jumping in the Maven project, or how do you going to start it?
We're going to start directly from Maven.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So all the batches, sorry to interrupt. So all the batches is only on the weekend. The Selenium and
the classes are only over the weekends.
Okay.
Rahul sir, actually earlier you have mentioned that in Selenium 3 we have Selenium WebDriver, right? And in Selenium 4 is WebDriver included or it is excluded from?
No, WebDriver is there. In 2, 3, 4, WebDriver is there. Just that there's a change in architecture. In case you were working on Selenium 3, whatever code that you have written, the same code will work with Selenium 4 as well. Normally, coding wise, you're not going to see any difference. That change is only in the architecture part.
Okay, thanks.
Rahul sir, I am having one question. That like Maven is a build project, and along with that we have a dependency tool as a Maven, right?
Yeah.
So why do we need Eclipse?
Eclipse is like an editor where you'll be writing the code. It is going to give you some artificial intelligence feature where you need not to write a complete thing like you're writing on a notepad, right? You don't get all the auto suggestions that if you put a dot, you are getting so many methods. You don't get that thing in notepad. So that is the reason you use Eclipse. If you make any mistake, Eclipse provide you suggestions, right? All the imports and other things are automatically added. All the color coding that you see with Java keywords are in red color and the other string are in black color. So these are the things that you don't get in Notepad. So that is why Eclipse is there. You can maintain a complete project, right? If you do this thing in Notepad, you'll be manually creating folders and keeping the files in those folders.
So you mean to say that we can any modification we do on Eclipse, we can integrate the same in our projects?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much.
There was some security violation due to Log4j recently. I saw in the So what was that, sir? I couldn't.
There was some security loophole which was there in Log4j. Due to which any hacker can get into the logs and do some sort of injection through that. So that was some loophole which was there in the previous version, even in this Log4j 2 version as well. So some of the projects which were implementing like the logging using those Log4j version were at risk. But this issue was actually encountered by their own internal team itself. So no one outside has encountered it. So Log4j itself, they themselves have encountered this issue, and then they have fixed this issue in the latest release, and they have done an announcement that whosoever, even if the banking project or a health domain, if they're using Log4j for generating logs, they must update their latest dependency to the latest version so that there should not be any vulnerability issues. So that was the actual issue at that
point. So sir, it's like Log4j is an API that's used for tracking the logs.
Yeah, it's logs. API for generating logs. Yeah,
generating logs in a more readable format, like Splunk.
Absolutely.
Like Splunk and all that we use.
Yeah, so all your server logs, your actions, all the things can be logged using Log4j.
Okay, and they can be easily understandable. Like there are some technique and algorithm is used in Log4j.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, Rahul,
Just for the information, regarding log4j, in our office, our release team only made some changes and they rectified it. Is it correct, or otherwise some any organized persons are updating and they are providing the modified file to
No, I mean, like in case you're using a previous version of log4j, you just need to update to the latest version. That's it. They've
Okay.
already fixed it.
Okay, that means from our office side, no need to update anything personal. That means self.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Rahul sir, I have one question regarding there are different tools which are getting introduced every year in the industry for the automation. So what is the competition with Selenium, and is
Selenium is
enough?
Selenium is still at the top. No one can beat Selenium, although there are so many tools like Protractor came into the market, then Cypress came into the market, Robot Framework, WebDriver IO, and number of tools are there, right? But most of things you'll find the base is Selenium. In case your base is built up, if you know Selenium, then you may gonna take another 10 to 15 days easily to learn any other automation tool.
The languages on which that tools are dependent on, like for example, Playwright is Protractor is depend on JavaScript. So we have to learn different language also then.
See, if you're again, this all depends on if your programming base is built up. If you know Java, then it will gonna take you at hardly 10 to 15 days to learn another language. You can easily switch yourself to Selenium Python, to Selenium C#, because see, the basic of programming is same in all these languages. So you just need to change the syntax. The programming concepts remains the same, right? Like initially when I started my career, I started with Selenium Java. Then I've also given one of the training in Shutterstock, New York, in Selenium Ruby as well. Then I've also like created a course on Selenium with Python as well. I've also created a course on Selenium with JavaScript using Protractor, Cypress. So see, I've used multiple languages, and I'm completely from the testing background. I'm not from the development background.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Right. It's just like if your base is built up, you should be able to migrate yourself easily. And these automation tools, they keep on coming. So don't worry about it. Every few days, you'll see a new automation tool is coming into the picture. But no one can beat Selenium. So don't worry about it. Selenium is there in the market from long time, and still they're making a very good progress. You can see Selenium 4 is something which is very powerful as compared to any other automation tool in the industry. So they'll keep on incrementing the version. So don't worry about it. The scope of Selenium is quite good.
Okay, thanks.
All right, guys. Any more questions? Otherwise, we are good to wind up.
Rahul, just one last. There's something like browser stack. What exactly it is? I mean, how is it
Browser
different
stack, Sauce Labs, these are the cloud platforms. So if in case you want the complete like setup on a cloud platform, something like AWS is on a wider scale. So this browser stack, Sauce Lab, they provide you the browsers and the operating system, like operating system and the browser setup on their operating system. So in case you want to test on, let's say, multiple versions of Firefox. So on a local machine, it is little difficult. You are uninstalling and installing the previous version, but that thing you just need to get a license of browser stack. You write the Selenium code from here, enter the key, the code will be executed on browser stack cloud. There you can select that you want to execute it on a window machine, on Firefox browser, or you want to execute it on Android phone, on like Chrome browser. So these are the things that these like service provider they actually provide. So there are different browser stack is there, Sauce Labs are there. So all these are the sponsors of Selenium as well. So these are the people who are paying for the Selenium project. Although Selenium is open source, but how they're earning, they're earning from these sponsors. If you go to the main website, you'll see the sponsor list over here. So there are some platinum level sponsors, some Selenium level sponsor. You can see Browser Stack, Sauce Lab. So they are the people who are actually paying to Selenium so that this project can survive forever. And in like what Selenium guys they're doing, they're just promoting them over here because everyone knows Selenium. So if their companies are promoted over here, they're definitely going to get some business from here.
Okay. So in that case, if we create work on any project, then we can shouldn't be worrying about the grid part because that can be covered through the browser stack or something like that integration.
Yeah, I
still we
mean,
have to
it depends. I mean, there are, see, these are all license based. So you need to, there are companies who actually purchase license of Browser Stack, Sauce Lab, so that, I mean, we need not to invest on the physical infrastructure. So we can directly purchase a license from them and we can execute the grid test, the remote test on their machines.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Rahul, one more last questions. So from next sessions, you will be giving us assignment like a real-time hands-on.
Absolutely. See, the
Yeah.
initial 2 sessions are more theoretical session because before we get started practically with Selenium, we should be clear with the basic architecture and what exactly Selenium is, what the history is. So now that part is over. Now we'll be practically starting automating the websites. And once we start with it, I'll be giving you so many assignments that you need to practically automate it.
Yeah, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, hi Rahul. One more question from my side. What is a full stack QA and how to become full stack QA?
See, full stack QA, it like as I said, the profiles of QAs are converted into SDET. So full stack QA is a combination of multiple tools that you should be familiar with. So it could be related to the basic functional automation. Then you need to have something related to the backend testing, the API testing. You should be familiar with this performance testing part as well, because JMeter is again another thing which is open source. So full stack QA means you should be all rounder of everything.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Rahul sir, you showed us that while copy pasting the .exe file, you were able to open the launch the open the Chrome browser. But same thing when I am trying on my machine, like in Mac, like I am getting just error like set the system property, which you said.
Yeah,
that
on Mac copy paste of executable file might not work. So there you need to provide the path. But in the next session, we need not to provide any path. We need not to give even the executable. We need not to paste it to the project. That will automatically be handled. So don't worry about it. We'll be using WebDriver Manager that will do the entire magic. So don't worry.
Thank you, sir. And nice, you are teaching very nice. It's totally understandable.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
No
everyone.
doubt, Rahul. Going very basic and it's clear. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you all. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rahul.
sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Thanks, Rahul.
So we'll meet next weekend. Thank you all.
Yes.
Thanks for
Thank you.
joining in.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.